we're going to try to wrap up our series that we've been doing for a couple months now on the church. And so we've learned a lot of stuff. We've seen a lot of things. In particular, in the past month, we've talked a lot about opportunities for you to serve and to get involved and do some different things. So what I wanted to do is kind of try to tie all that back up and help you kind of figure out, what's the next step maybe for that. We want to do that because I don't know if you've ever noticed, but whenever you talk about certain things, like certain concepts or certain ideas, whenever you say that, if it's not clearly defined, then usually when you say the idea, you have something in mind, and the person that's listening to you, they have something in mind. And if you keep pursuing this idea, pretty soon you find out that oftentimes those two ideas aren't the same. Okay, let me illustrate what I mean by that. So if I were to say family, if I said family, you have an idea in your mind about what family looks like, right? I mean, what are some things that you think about when you hear family? Mom and dad, all right? Okay, so you've got a picture, you're going like a family, so mom and dad. Okay, how about somebody else? Kids. What's that? That was a long one. Married couple with no kids, all right? Yeah.
Safe zone.
What's that?
Safe zone.
A safe zone, okay? Yeah. What else? Somebody else? Brothers and sisters. Yeah, so there's all these different things, right? But here's the thing. So it's almost like I have a picture. In fact, I didn't send it ahead of time so we get it up, but I had a picture of my family. I wanted to put my picture of my family up there. And so when I say family, I think about my picture of my family. When you hear family, you think about your picture of your family, right? So somebody said, what do you think about when you think about family? And somebody said mom and dad. I don't think about mom and dad necessarily as much now because my father passed away. So I think more mom, but that's my picture, my definition. You've got different things. Some people said, somebody said a husband and wife and no kids. Somebody said kids, right? So depending on who you are, you may have different things. I met a guy last week, and I was talking to him, and I met a couple of his sons, and I said, so how many kids do you have? And he said, 11. And I was like, good Lord, what happened? And his wife was sitting there. I'm just like, that's just literally, I was almost speechless. I'm just like, I don't even know what to do with that, And his wife said, well, that's nothing. Like, we had 13 in my family. And so I don't know if they make cameras big enough to get that whole extended family, right? So everybody's got kind of a different idea about family when we talk about family. Here's the thing. Church is much the same way. When I say church, I have a picture in mind. I have something in mind that I think about. And when I say church, you have something in mind that you think about. What we need to do is, because we're part of the church, of the same church, often many of us, then we need to kind of clarify what's this picture that we're looking at. Okay? And the way that we clarify it is, I tell you what I think, and you fix your picture. No, that's not how it works, right? It also doesn't work like this. This is how some other churches handle it. They go, the pastor has a different picture, so we fire him and find one that has a picture like ours, right? So we don't do that. What we do is we go back and we look at the Bible and we say, okay, you know what? We need to see if we, as close as we can, discover what God's picture is of the church. And I understand, even in saying that makes it sound like what I'm about to tell you, that's what God says, and everybody else has a different idea. That's not the case at all. People have differing perspectives on it, but I want to give you, as best I can, our perspective on it. And so to do that, I'm going to show you just a couple of pictures and show you kind of where we're at. I think maybe as America, okay? Let's talk about church and maybe what we think about. So if we were to talk about the picture that most Americans have when we say church, it would look a lot like this, okay? We're going to use a picture that we're going to talk about. And we'll just start off. I'll give you a cheat here. We've talked about what our definition of church is, and we have said it's a simple church. That means that there are believers in Jesus that are gathered together, and Jesus is in the middle as their king. And they're trying to do the things that Jesus commanded them to do, which would be the great commandments, which is to love God and to love others. And then he gave them a commission, and he said, I want you to go and make disciples. Okay? And so they go and they make disciples. That would be the core and the essence of what a church really is. That was one of our first weeks when we started this series. We talked about this definition. Now, here's the thing. To do this, how many people need to be here to do this? More than one. Jared's smart. That's why we pay him the big bucks, right? Yeah, it's got to be more than one. Okay? How many people does it end with? Yeah, there's more than two. Yeah, that's no, there's no limit, there's no numerical limit on it, okay? But it does involve, so let's just blow one myth up right away, okay? A lot of people believe that I read the Bible all alone by myself at my house, or to make it more romantic sounding, they usually say, I do church in the woods, in my deer stand. I read my Bible and I think about Jesus in my deer stand. That's baloney. You're thinking about a buck, right? And so that's not an accurate, you may like it, but it's not really an accurate picture of the church because it's just one person. It's got to have more than one, okay? Here's what happens though. So this would be the basic things that must take place. But then we also add some other things that are on the outside, and these things are good, but these things are not necessary. Meaning, if we go back and we talk about this, we're going to find that Jesus addresses these issues specifically. There's some other issues that we have in mind when we think about church that aren't necessarily addressed by Jesus specifically. So we come up with things like, what's the number one thing you think about when you hear the word church? Building. John Mark and I went to China, and we sat down with some people that were in this little tumbled down hut. Dirt floor, had these little bitty stools that we would sit on, and we were talking to them, and we were like, what could we do? How could we help you out? In this communist country where if you identify yourself as a Christian, you're going to get into legal trouble, how could we help you? And they said, well, you can help us get a building. Seems counterintuitive to me that would be the best move, right? To put up a big building with a steeple on it that says to the government, hey, come check us out and blow us up, right? So, but that's what we think about is building, right? That's number one thing I think that people think about. What else do you think about when you think about a church? People are like, I'm scared to say anything, right? Okay, a large congregation. Right? Yeah. So we think about people. When we start adding a large congregation, we start thinking about how do we get the people? We start thinking about, programs. What's a program? Well, it's maybe a series of classes. Maybe it's something that we do that are tailored to drawing people in and meeting their needs and taking care of them, right? So we've got programs. I'm partial to this one. We think about staff. Okay, so we have like pastors. We have paid people who do work there. I'm kind of partial to that aspect of it. But see, then we have to come up with how we're going to do all these things. And so we've got like budgets. These are just some ideas, right, of things that are going on. Most of the time when you talk to Americans and you say, what do you think about when you think about church? Most of the things that they're going to refer to are going to relate to this or this or this or this. And those things are not bad. Okay, like I said, staff. I'm partial to that one. It feeds my family, So I'm okay with that. It's not necessarily bad. A building, it's not necessarily bad, but it's also not necessarily the best either. Okay, we have tended to buy into this idea that these things make it the best. In fact, Larry said, I think about a lot of people. So what we tend to do is we tend to evaluate church. And oftentimes the way we evaluate church is how many people are there, right? Because it's America, the bigger it is, the better it's got to be. And so we think about there's got to be a lot of people there for it to be effective. We think about not only are there a lot of people there, but is it a big building? Is it a nice building? How big is your budget? If you go to pastors' meetings, they'll ask you, how many members do you have? What's your budget? Which is funny to me because I'm always like, I don't know. Like enough to do the stuff we're supposed to do? I don't really know. But they ask these questions, like about all these different things and evaluate it. And here's what happens. We begin to measure things that are on this outside. And as we do that, the things that are here on the inside, they kind of begin to like fade away. And I'm not saying that they don't happen. I'm not saying that churches with buildings and programs and staff and all those things, that they don't make disciples and love God and love others. I'm not trying to say that at all. But what I'm trying to say is this: many times what they're measuring has nothing to do with that. They're never asking a question about the effectiveness of what they're doing. So many people come to church and this is what their picture looks like. And so they walk in the door and they're going like, nice building. There's adequate number of people. Apparently, they get enough money in that they can pay the bills. Now, we'll see whenever the dude that looks really funny stands up and starts talking, we'll see if they actually have good staff or not. You know, and so they're kind of making these evaluations. The problem with that is we don't know anything about these middle parts, right? So here's what I want to do. We mentioned to you already what the definition of church is as best as we can understand it, which is, again, back to the triangle, okay? The triangle, what is it? What are the three things that we're trying to do? Love God, love others, make disciples. Who? Who are we looking for to do this? Everybody, right? Because, see, it starts off with one. As an individual, in fact, Jesus, when he gives these things, is not even addressing, well, at least when he's talking about the commandments, he's not even addressing like a large group of people. It says one guy came to him and he's asking him a question, and Jesus answers him and he says, the guy asks, what's the greatest commandment? And Jesus says this to this one person: you shall love your God with all of your heart and all your soul and all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And the second is like it: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all of the law and the prophets. So what Jesus is saying to him is that you, individually, personally, you need to love God and you need to love other people. He also then addresses, he talks to all the disciples, and he says to them in Matthew chapter 28, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey all that I have commanded you, and behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. So, who is Jesus talking to in Matthew chapter 28? Who's he talking to? The believers, the disciples that are there. And now, are they each individually supposed to make disciples? Yeah. So see, what we're talking about is a definition for a church. It actually starts off with a definition for the individual. And so each person that's here, if you consider yourself to be a disciple, a believer, a follower of Jesus, then this should be something that you use to evaluate your own life. And you need to ask yourself, am I loving God with all of my heart, soul, mind, and strength? Am I loving others as myself? Are there people that I'm investing in and teaching to take the next step in their spiritual walk? Am I making disciples? And you should be asking this personally, and here's what will happen. So when we introduced this idea several months ago, I said we need to look at this as a way to evaluate the church and see if we're balanced in the church. And so I said some of you are going to have passions in different directions, different areas. And so I said, like, I am passionate in, anybody remember? Making disciples. I said that there was one thing I'm not very passionate about. You remember what that was? Now, how did everybody know that one and you didn't know about making disciples? Right? In fact, what I said is, I don't want to do this. Right? I want some other people to come alongside who are gifted. Now, is there some truth to this? Right? I am passionate about making disciples. I really am. Loving others is hard for me. I mean, it just is. I'm an introvert, so I start spending time with people, and man, I just start getting drained and tired. I mean, it's rough on me. Okay, so in a lot of ways, that's kind of what I'm alluding to. Okay, but I said, man, I don't want to do this stuff. So God's like, duly noted. Guess what I've been doing for the last several months? That's right. So he's been saying like, okay, so loudmouth, what you get to do is you get to work on loving others. And so so most of my opportunities to make disciples have come through loving others. Okay, so on a personal level, this becomes a sheet for you to evaluate what you are doing personally. And personally, you have been called to love God, love others, and make disciples. So the question then is, how are you doing at that? Now, as we gather people together, so we take an individual disciple, okay? And they are loving God and loving others and making disciples down here. That's what they're doing. Well, then they're called to gather together because they can't be a church. They can't do that alone. And so then they have to begin to gather together with another small group of people. And that group of people, they're gathered together with one purpose, that Jesus would be in the middle as their king. What are they supposed to do? Okay? They're supposed to make disciples as a group. What else are they supposed to do? Love others. Stop bringing that one up. And then what else? They're supposed to love God, right? So do you see, you've got a group here, and now this would be a group of more than one. They're gathered together and they say, Jesus, you're our king. We want to obey you. We want to follow you. We want to do what you want us to do. So they're gathered together in who knows how many, right? It could be 2, it could be 10, it could be 30, whatever. But it's a smaller gathering where they can know the things that are going on. Okay? Now, as you go on and you add several of these groups that begin to meet, so this would be like biblically, if we were to go and look, biblically, the most frequent reference to a church refers to meeting in somebody's house or somebody's home. Okay? So as you have like the church that meets at Lee's house, and then you have the church that meets at, whoever's house. Man, I messed that crown bad up. And then you have the church that meets at so-and-so's house, You've got all these different churches that are meeting in different homes. They then begin to gather together, and they say, you know what, let's meet together and make more triangles. Okay, so they gather together, and it's a larger church. Let's call it this. So here we've got the church that meets at Lee's house. And who's in that church? Well, there's Lee, and there's Tracy, and there's Carrie, and there's Jacqueline, and we can list, there's about a dozen of us. And so we can list all of those individuals. They're right in here. Okay? And then we've got the church that meets at Jared's place, and we can talk about the people that are in there. The church that meets at Jan's house, and we've got the church that meets, we got Runner Church that's meeting out at different, so we got all these different churches that are meeting together, and then we all gather together on a Sunday morning, and together now, we have multiple simple churches that are gathered together here at Redeemer. And what are we doing at Redeemer? Loving God and loving others and making disciples. If we did this, so let's go back, okay? So we're going to go back. So this is Redeemer, okay? This is the church at Lee's house. This is Lee. And so am I loving God and loving others and making disciples? I just shared with you a story. Yeah, so I'm trying, it's okay. Yeah, and God is speaking to me and is directing me, and so I'm changing, and I'm having to evaluate what's going on. Yes. So we say, yes, He is. As a group that meets at our house, are we loving God, loving others, and making disciples? We were talking about this the other night over Hot Wings, and so we were evaluating that. And are we perfect? No. But do we identify some things that we need to change to pursue loving God, loving others, and making disciples better? Yes. So we have a group that's trying to do this. And as we multiply that, we've got multiple ones that are going on. Then when we gather them all together, do you think that we have a strong church, or do you think that we have a weak church? Because in each of these areas, you're going to be able to say, okay, who is this larger group made up of? Well, it's made up of smaller groups. What is that smaller group doing? Well, they're trying to do what we're called to do, love God, love others, and make disciples. Now, inside of that small group, how about the individuals? How are they doing? They're doing pretty good. They're loving God, loving others, making disciples. Okay? That would be the way to build an ideal church. Theoretically, that would be the way to build a perfect church. If everybody in the church was loving God, loving others, making disciples, pursuing that, they were all gathered together in smaller groups so they can encourage one another and help one another on and keep each other accountable and keep each other encouraged and keep each other moving forward. And then they're all gathered together so that they can do bigger things and they could make a bigger impact. That would be a great church. Now, does that describe Redeemer? Nobody wants to say it, do they? Okay, yeah, okay. So fair. That is a fair observation. It doesn't for me. Okay, now, so again, this is a good tool for evaluation. So, does this describe Redeemer for me? At Lee Cordell, does this describe Redeemer for me? It does. Okay? I am individually trying to pursue God by loving God, loving others, making disciples. I'm part of a gathering of people, a smaller gathering. We know each other. We know our struggles. We know our problems. We're pursuing God together. And then we are part of a larger group, too, that then those individuals are being a part of pursuing God together. But the reality is this. The reality is if we ask everybody that was here this morning and was present here this morning, if you could trace that back in your life, first off, there are people that are here that you say, you know what, I'm a follower of Jesus, but that's really a better description of me 5 or 10 years ago than it is of me today. There was a time when I was passionately following Jesus, but you know, man, I got busy and stuff happened, and so like, no, I'm not really pursuing Jesus like I should, and you know what, I don't know that I have time to like get together with other people and do that stuff, so no, I'm not really plugged in. Really what I do is, and this is honestly an expectation that most churches have of their people, is I show up once or twice a month at this big gathering on Sunday morning, and I kind of call it good. And I'm not telling you this to like make you feel bad or guilt you or shame you. I'm telling you this to say you're missing out on the best part. Okay? Because gathering here on Sunday is not the best way to experience the joy that you can find in Jesus. It's really not. It's really not. Is there anything wrong with it? No. Is it good in a lot of ways? Yeah. I mean, do you ever walk out of here encouraged? Whatever Lee's not preaching. Right? You know, I mean, yeah, like it's encouraging. You know, I mean, there's many times I walk out of here, you know, humming a song Jared, you know, sang, and you know, I feel encouraged and I feel pointed in the right direction. I hear stuff that's going on in people's lives. You know, we share stories before we come over here to serve, and so I heard some stories this morning that were encouraging to me about how God's at work, and so, yeah, you know, it's encouraging, it's good. But man, if this was all, if just this was what I was counting on and what I was leaning into and what I was depending on to be following Jesus, guys, it falls far short of what it really could be. And so most churches, again, if I were to go back and say, you know, most churches have this big picture out here, and they've got all these things, buildings, budgets, programs, pastors, all that kind of stuff. Most of what they're trying to evaluate and most of what they're trying to measure is they're trying to measure butts in the seats, how many people are there. And you know what, if I could be perfectly honest, you know why they're so concerned about how many people are there? Because it takes a lot of people to give a little bit, because not many people give a whole lot. And so you got to have a lot of people giving a little bit so that you can raise enough money so that you can do all the other things. And what we end up doing is we end up measuring like how many people are here, how much money are they giving, and we completely miss, are they pursuing God? Are they pursuing loving other people? Are they making disciples? And we end up in a place like we were several years ago, where I go, you know what? We've got a nice building. You know what? We have a decent budget. And even better, we're taking in enough money to meet that budget. We've got staff. You know, we've got a good team that's been built here. We've got some good things that are going on. And then I started to ask the question, so are we doing this? In particular, are we doing this? Are we making disciples? Are we making people who are actually passionate about following Jesus and they know how to do what he's asked them to do? And I had to say, not really. We're really not. In most churches, what we end up doing is we've got a scorecard that doesn't match what Jesus actually asked us to do. And so what we want to do is rather than, and this is how we started, okay? This is the story of Redeemer if you're, newer and you don't know the whole story. I showed up in Omaha. My wife and I moved here with our kids and moved here from Florida. And I didn't know anybody. I still remember the moment that I walked into, it was Oakview Mall, and it was in the jewelry counter at, I don't remember the store. It was one of the big department stores there. And we were walking by, and I saw someone that I knew. It was one of my kids' teachers. And I remember thinking, yes, I actually saw somebody that I know who they are. And I was like, this feels awesome. So I didn't know what to do. And so we just started to try to have this big gathering thing where we invited all these people in. And we didn't know who any of those people were, and we didn't even know what was going on in their lives. We were just like, hopefully we can entertain them enough, or we can interest them enough that they'll stick around. And if not, because I'm concerned that that'll happen, we'll serve donuts. And so we have some people that are here, I won't call any names, that are here, and they would say the reason to stick around. I was like, hey, man, at least they got donuts. Okay? So we have to come back. Now I want you to understand we're trying to change the scorecard. What I would love to see is that one day we have a church where we can look back and we can say, you know what? We could go to individual people and we could say, are you here on Sundays in this larger gathering? Yeah. Actually, that's not a big deal to me, whether you're here or not. The next one is, are you a part of a small gathering of believers where you know one another and you're pursuing loving God, loving others, and making disciples? You and some other people that know you well and that are encouraging you, that are holding you accountable, that are helping you in that journey. And I hope that we can trace back and we can say, yeah, they are. Now, as being a part of that, then are you personally, are you loving God, loving others, and making disciples? And the win is that we would say yes. Okay? So what I went through this whole long explanation because I want to then go back and I want to explain to you, as a church, what do we expect of you? Okay? Because here's the thing. It gets frustrating when you are part of an organization that expects things and that you, as a participant in that organization, have differing expectations. Okay? So, again, I'll give you an example. One of my kids is playing in the band at one of our local high schools. And so we go to a meeting freshman year, all the freshman band parents, and they're explaining to us how great the band is. They're explaining to us how much money it costs to do all the things that the band does. And they said, we have this amazing fundraiser to raise that money. And we serve concessions at the College World Series. We man one of those booths, and we earn the majority of the money that we need for our budget to do that. And so you, as a family, have to contribute to like 5 slots for doing that. And you know what? My wife and I are like, high five. We're like, we don't have to walk around like selling stuff, all that kind of thing. And I'm like, I make my kids work. And so I'm going to ship my kid off to work 5 slots at the College World Series, and they're going to get the money they need to do the stuff that they need to do. Yahtzee. I'm like, cool, this is awesome. And then I get an email, and the email says, it's time for our big fundraiser. We need every family to cover 5 slots at the College World Series. So every member of your family, 18 and older, needs to sign up for a slot. I went from high 5 to like high 4. You know, I mean, it was like, dude, I am not excited about this at all. That means that I've got to do all the work, and my kid sits at home and eats popcorn. Right? And so it was very frustrating. It's still frustrating. It's really, yeah, I mean, like, it's still like tearing the Band-Aid off. Like, I mean, it hurts. Like, I'm not really excited about it. And so this year, I had been to more College World Series games the past 2 years than I had the previous 8 combined. I didn't see a doggone thing that happened. All I saw was popcorn and, all that kind of stuff, So, yeah, but that was frustrating for me because I had an expectation coming in. They had an expectation of me coming in, and those 2 expectations didn't match. So, at Redeemer, what do we expect of you? Now, I went through this whole long illustration, hopefully, to explain to you why we have these expectations. And these are the expectations that we have of you at Redeemer. We have an expectation that, you know what, I'm just going to do it this way because I think it'll be easier. We have an expectation of you that you would be a disciple who loves God, loves others, and makes disciples personally. This is the foundation of the entire thing, is that you personally have submitted your life to Jesus. That you understand that I am made right with God, not because of the things that I do, but because Jesus did everything right for me and then says, I'll trade places with you, the one who's done everything wrong. I will trade with you if you will submit your life to me. And Jesus does that, and it's grace, and we are made right with God. In fact, what happens is Jesus says, you know what? All that junk that you have done, all that stuff that you have messed up, all that stuff that you're going to mess up tomorrow and the week after that, and as long as you live, I will take all of that, and in return, I will give you my perfect performance in its place. That's what salvation is. It's an exchange of our sin for Jesus' perfection, so that when God looks at us, God is not going, let's talk about what you've been doing lately. But instead, God looks and he says, Jesus took your place. Jesus gave to you his performance. So when I look at you, I see, what did Jesus do? Perfect. You're good. But that then compels us to love him and to pursue him and to know him more. So our expectation is this, that every disciple hears from God and does whatever he says daily. That's what I want for all of us. How do you hear from God? You hear from God by going to what he has actually already said, and you look at the scriptures. And so what we're wanting to do is teach you a couple of skills. We really want to teach you a skill of how to hear from God through the scriptures. And so we've been talking about a very simple way to do that, and that is SOS. And it stands for this. What does it say? So you read a chapter of the scriptures, you underline a couple of things maybe that stand out to you as you're reading. You're like, oh, that's interesting, or oh, it's almost like sometimes you'll read the Bible and there'll be things that seem like they're in bold print, and you're like, oh, okay, and you mark that. And you come back and you look at that and you go, well, what does that say? What does it say? So as an example, this morning I was reading Matthew I think it was chapter 26, and in it was the story of the Last Supper, and Jesus is talking about that, and he tells Peter, you're going to deny me, and Peter says, no. If I have to die for you, I'll die for you, but I'm not going to deny you. And then he turns around, they go to the garden, and Jesus says, can you stay up with me tonight and pray with me? And Peter's like, sure. And then the guards show up, and Peter goes, oh, no, I don't know who he is, and he runs, And so what does that say? Well, for me, what it says to me is this. It's easy to make declarations about what you will do than it is to live in moment-by-moment obedience. Okay, those are just some words, that's what it said to me, okay? So, what about obey then? So what does it say? Now, what do I obey? Well, for me, it says this. I'm often talking about what I'm going to do in the future. We're going to do these things, we're going to do that stuff, we're going to do these things. And then Jesus is like, hey, when we're together in the garden and you're to be seeking me, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm kind of asleep a lot of times. And so for me, it's that I need to focus in more on the small moment-to-moment obedience with Jesus than I do about all the great, grand, big things that I plan to do one day out there somewhere. Okay? So we say, what do I obey? And then, it's a question of, the last one is there someone that I could share that with? So what does it say? What can I obey, and who do I share that with? And I want to tell you something. We learned this when Bill and Inkai were here a few months ago. And so they mentioned this, and I started to do this each day as I'm reading. Now listen, I've been reading the Bible consistently, as in, most days of the week for about 20 years now. And this has really transformed that for me because it's forced me to identify something that God was saying to me that day. Not just some broad, general theological concept like, Jesus loves me, but this is something specific that I need to do. So what we want you to do is that each of you would be learning to hear from God through the Scriptures. Maybe this is a way to do that. Okay, very simple. Read a chapter a day and do this. You can do that. Second thing we want to do is we want people to learn how to pray. Because we want to learn, Jesus taught this. So for example, in this story that I just explained, Jesus goes out and he has a trial that's coming up. You know, he is going to be brought in and he's going to be arrested and he's going to be crucified. And so what does he do? He spends all night praying. Okay? And so we want to teach you to hear from God and then do what he says as he empowers you to do that individually. That means Lee. That means each one of us, that we're each individually doing that. That's what we want. We want every disciple to hear from God daily and do whatever he says daily. We want that for everybody. Okay? Second expectation would be this. We want every disciple to participate in a gathering of other believers that are focused on the same things and that they can encourage one another to love God and love others and make disciples. Let me tell you a couple of reasons why this is so important. For one thing, it's very difficult to love others if you're not around anybody else. That's a profound statement, so think about it. Okay? If you're all alone, it's very hard to love somebody else. Okay? In the sense of love is actually action. It's what you do. It's not a feeling that you have. You're like, well, there was that time that my wife and I, we were, I was on a business trip and I loved her, even though I was alone. Okay, fair point. So, but we're talking about action. Like, it's hard to do that, like, when you're completely alone. So, you're to be gathered together partially because it's going to help you have some needs that you can meet, have some people that you can love, and also it's going to have some people that are going to then be able to love you. It's going to help you because you're encouraging one another to love God and to pursue Him together. One of the struggles that we all have when we make a commitment to something like, reading the Bible and pursuing God daily, or, starting a diet or an exercise program or something like that, is we need somebody else to help to keep us accountable, right? So, it was helpful for me this morning when I was telling Archer, I haven't run in a long time, and he goes, I can tell. Right? So I'm like, dude, ferocious diet begins Monday. Thanks. Right? So I don't think that was really what he intended, but I don't think he intended either. I think he was just talking. But it helped me, right? Because now I'm like, great, now I'm fat. Now that all of you are like, yeah, now that you bring it up, I see what you mean. So, right? So it helps us with that. And when we set a goal that we say, you know what, we want to pursue God, it helps us to have others to encourage us and help us along. There'll be things that we'll go like, I want to do this. I don't know how. And there's others that can come alongside and help. Or there's people that are like, I don't know. You know what? I've got this brokenness that I've got this person I need to forgive. And, it's hard. And I don't know that I can do that. It hurts so bad. And we're going to pray for you in that. And we're going to be a part of that with you. So we have this real strong belief that Jesus wants us to be gathered together with other believers that are helping to encourage us, to hold us accountable, to meet needs for us, and also to be there so that we can meet their needs as well, okay? So we have a desire that everybody will be gathered in a smaller group. Here's the other thing. The third thing would be this. We have multiple groups that are all, meeting and things like that. We want to have this larger gathering too. We can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. So we want to do that. And we want to have this larger gathering where we're together. We're all loving God and loving others and making disciples. And in order to do that, we want everybody, every disciple, to minister using their gifts regularly. Regularly. And that may change, okay, in terms of how often and that kind of thing. We've got ways that you can serve here at Redeemer that's like a rotation of once a month that you work. We have very few people, I probably shouldn't say that. We have some people who serve just about every week. But most people, I think, have a rotation. They serve maybe once a month, twice a month, something like that. We've got some other groups that we've been bringing up this month to have you hear from them about ways that you can impact the city around us and begin to pursue God and help others to hear about Him and make disciples of them. And so, there's ways that you can be involved in those things as well. So on the back, we've got kind of a list of that. What I want you to understand is this. We have 3 expectations of you. We want you to be personally pursuing Jesus. We want you to be plugged into a smaller group of fellow disciples that are pursuing Jesus together, and then we want you to be a larger part of this larger group that's ministering on a regular basis. It does not mean, so that 3rd expectation, does not mean that you have to do all of these things. In fact, one way that it may look is this. David Cowles was talking to me this morning, and David said, here's my plan. Okay, he didn't say this about personally, but it better be part of his personal plan. He just didn't tell me about it. Is that he's going to personally be pursuing Jesus. I know that he is, because what we're about to talk about next is a progression of as he's been doing that. So I'm going to personally pursue Jesus and love Him and love others and make disciples. And he said, so now Lindsay and I, we want to start a group. And now that I told the entire church, you have to. So he said, we're going to start this group. And we're going to gather together a smaller group of people that are together, loving God, loving others, and making disciples. And what I thought is we would meet, let's say Tuesday nights every week. This group would be meeting together. And then 1 week out of the month, we would go and we would serve somewhere together. And I said, dude, I think that's a phenomenal idea. Is that doable? Now, it may be challenging. Okay? I know some of you hear a night. I've got to commit a night. I mean, forget that. Some of you are thinking, I've got to commit some time personally to do this. And then you're hearing I've got to commit one night a week, that I'm going to do something else. But is it doable? Yeah. Is it going to take some adjustment? Yes. But it's doable. There are other ways that you can serve too. So we've got some things. Disciple groups. That would be, Dave says, you know what? We're gonna start a group. We're gonna call our friends. We're gonna say, hey, we're gonna do a Bible study. They're gonna invite people in. They're gonna try to get this group that started. Maybe it's people from Redeemer that are part of that. They're we're gonna start this group. You can do that. If that's something you would like to do, or in fact, even if you're just you know what, I would love to do that. I don't know that I could be the guy to lead it, but I would love to do that. I've got some friends that I think if I called them up and invited them to a Bible study, they would probably say yes. Then let us know. We would love to help you to get that started. Okay, that's one way that we could do that. Heartland Hope was here. Freeway Ministries was here. Global Friends was here. Christian Heritage was here. Heartland Hope was talking about how to work with the under-resourced in our community to provide food, clothing, and life skills for them. And so Stuff a Truck is one way you can serve with that. Once a month, we go down and we serve. What night, Carl? Tuesday night, once a month. Second Tuesday? All right, second Tuesday of the month, we go down and we serve at Heartland Hope. You can do that on a basis, if that's what appeals to you. If that's something that you feel passionate about. We've got Freeway Ministries. And so one Saturday, I believe it is a month, second Saturday, all right? So we do it all in the second week, right? So you just plan on the second week. So second Saturday, we go down and we provide meals for them. We cook food, prepare it for them for their big service. We've also got some people that are going down, like Sonia has gone down, and she has met a couple of ladies there. She introduced one of them, I know, to Jesus, and is now meeting with her to disciple her. That's a part of that ministry, okay? And so she's pursuing that and doing that. We got others that are doing Heartland Hope as well. Global Friends, Julie was here a few weeks ago, and so we've got international students from around the world that are coming to Omaha, and they want to make an American friend. And we have a ministry, we have an opportunity that we could just offer hospitality to an international student who wants to know Americans, and some of them even want to know Jesus. Some of them want to know Jesus and don't know they want to know Jesus. Right? So we have an opportunity to minister to them, and we can be involved in that. My wife and I have been having discussions this week about how we're going to help with that. We feel passionate. I've got kids that are talking about that as well, and so we want to kind of do that. That's something that we feel passionate about, so we want to see if we can be involved in that in some way and help out, okay? Christian Heritage is foster care. We talked about them last week, and so you may have some interest in that. Those are outside things, but we've got some inside things as well. So we have the hospitality team that meets. They're the ones that are providing the coffee and donuts. Okay? They're helping out with that. We need assistance with that. You can help with them. We've got a welcome team. So we've got people that just want to make people have a warm welcome when they come to Redeemer for the first time. Actually, if they come back, we'll still give them a warm welcome. So we want that to happen, right? So they're on the welcome team, and they're doing that. Security. We need some guys, or maybe some intimidating ladies, to serve as security. And yeah, I know, who am I kidding? All ladies are intimidating to guys. So we need some people to provide security. That's just to make sure we have a safe environment, especially for our children, to make sure that, there's nobody back there that shouldn't be back there and that type of thing. Benevolence. A few weeks ago, I mentioned an opportunity that we had. Somebody knew of another person that had some financial needs and needed some help, and they said, I want to be a part of helping them. And so we need some people that have a heart like that want to be involved, because we get contacts and people that we can follow up with, and we would love to have some people that could be a part of that. Care. Lots of ways you can be involved in care. Do you like to sit and give advice, talk with people, hear their stories, things like that? There's people that, man, they need somebody to talk to. They need somebody to point them to Jesus through their struggles. We've got people that need prayer. They call and they just say, man, I'm in a tough spot, and I could really use people praying for me right now. We've got people who, would love to have somebody come by and see them. Maybe they're in the hospital, or, maybe they've, we had somebody here that had a baby, and just one person. And so Jacqueline and I know we went over, took a meal to them, sat down, and they were just like, oh, this is so great, because, we've been confined to the house, and nobody's been around. And so, the wife is, walking the walls, going crazy, and, I just want to talk to a human, And so ways that you could go by and see people and help them out. Care. Meals. We've got, opportunities for people to, if you like to cook, you can provide meals for people. Maybe they just had a baby, maybe they just moved, maybe they've, have a bereaved, they've lost a loved one, something like that. There's ways that you can provide in that. And there's one, too, and I want to really focus in on this one. It's a kind of a... I don't want to say urgent, but it has come up. We've got some spaces to fill. I talked to Nancy about our children's ministry, and she said, here's what I need. I need some helpers. She said, I don't need anybody to come in and teach. I've got people that are good at teaching children, but I need some people that can come alongside of them and help them. And that would be every age from 5th grade down. Okay, every room back there that needs some people, So, man, you like to sit around and play with, baby? You like to hold babies? I don't. But if you do, go back there and hold babies, right? I see all these ladies on Facebook, and they're like, got my baby fix. You need a baby fix? Then, you can go hold babies on Sunday mornings, for Jesus. It'll be great. Win-win. You can play with toddlers. You can go back there and hang out with them, play with them. You can be a part of helping kids hear about Jesus. And we've got kids who have accepted Jesus, have chosen to follow him because they've been a part of the ministry back here. So you can be involved in that. Okay? There's contact people on there. Here's the easiest way to get connected. If you'll take that connection card, and if on the back, if there's one of those that you're interested in, if you'll put your name and email on the front, and then on the back, if you'll write the one of these down that stands out to you, we will get you connected with that person to get you plugged in, okay? Because the third expectation we've got is that everybody would be ministering using their gifts as God has given them to them. Does that make sense? Guys, we do that because we want to be a part of a church that's pleasing to God and pleasing to Jesus. We want to be a part of a church that is loving others and helping them along in their journey to be more and more like Jesus. And I want you to experience the joy that comes from knowing and walking with Jesus daily. There's nothing like it. And so I want you to experience that as well. All right, let's pray, and then I want you to respond to God as he leads you and as he prompts you this morning. Father, thank you, God, thank you that we don't have to strive. We don't have to work hard, and we don't have to prove ourselves to you, that we're accepted because of Jesus and his performance on our behalf. God, thank you for the freedom, and thank you for the release in that. God, if there are those that this morning what they're hearing is, I've got to try harder and I've got to do better, God, I pray that they would experience your grace through faith in Jesus this morning. And God, for those of us that have, I pray that you would empower us and help us to pursue you in a way that would be pleasing to you and helpful to others and would bring joy to us and give us purpose for life. God, we pray that you would do this in us so that your kingdom would come and that your will would be done right here on earth, right here in Redeemer, right here in Omaha, right here in our lives, right here on our streets as it is in heaven. We ask it all in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.